Ghana is respected as a model of stability and democracy. It is the only sub-Saharan African country that U.S. President Barack Obama has visited. And recently, Ghanaian President John Atta Mills met with Mr. Obama at the White House. The U.S. ambassador to Ghana, Don Teitelbaum, was present during the meeting. And I recently spoke with him about the U.S.-Ghana relationship.
There were a number of issues that were addressed of interest to the two countries, but I think to a large degree, first, it was a chance for President Obama to reciprocate his visit to Ghana, and then also a chance to recognize Ghana's many strides in recent years.
Now, Ambassador Teitelbaum, Ghana is the most recent country to sign a development agreement with the Millennium Challenge account. Can you share with us what are the objectives?
Well, let's keep in mind Ghana has completed its first Millennium Challenge compact, and now they've been made eligible for a second compact. They haven't closed the deal on the second compact yet, but they have been found eligible, and our two countries are working very closely on a second compact. And the focus on this compact is likely to be on power and energy development in Ghana. You know, as part of this process, the U.S. government and the Ghanaian government got together to perform a study to identify the binding constraints to growth in Ghana. And the four binding constraints that we came up with together, the four constraints that we identified together, were first and foremost energy. The second was access to credit. The third was land tenure issues. And then the fourth was water issues. So the focus of the second compact is almost certainly going to be very much built around the power constraint.
Now, Mr. Ambassador, you know, there's a lot of excitement in Ghana due to the discovery of oil. There's a lot of private U.S. investment in Ghana's young offshore oil industry. U.S. officials say the Mills government is doing a good job of spending that windfall revenue responsibly. What is it that Ghana is doing differently than other African countries, particularly where oil has been seen as a curse?
Well, I think that the Ghanaians have the benefit of learning from the mistakes that some other countries might have made in other countries before them. And the Ghanaians, it's interesting that you use the word curse. The Ghanaians are saying very openly that they want to make sure that their oil resource is a blessing for the Ghanaian people and not a curse. And I think they've taken a lot of steps to make that happen. Among the very, very positive steps is Ghana's accession to and compliance with the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, in which the companies, the oil companies, for example, and extractive industries companies are very open and transparent about the revenues that they're creating for government, and then government is equally transparent to its people in the ways that it's using those revenues. And I think shining the light of day on these things and letting people see what's happening makes a huge difference, first and foremost. The other thing I'd have to say is that the money involved in oil is substantial. It's definitely a great thing for Ghana. But, you know, it pales in comparison to other resources in Ghana, in particular cocoa. And I think that wise use of Ghana's many, many natural resources, wise development of Ghana's industry comes back to one fundamental. And that's it. I think you can make a very, very strong argument that Ghana is the best developed democracy on the continent. Not just because it has good, free and fair elections on a regular basis that reflect the will of the people, but because Ghana has repeated inter-party political transitions, yes, peaceful transitions.
Mr. Ambassador.
But the reason I say this is because the Ghanaian government has to be responsive to the will of the people, and the people clearly are demanding wise use of Ghana's resources and revenues.
I want to go back to what you mentioned about Ghana's cocoa industry. I know that for many, many years that has been a little issue with the U.S., especially in relation to the U.S. having refused to sign the international cocoa agreement. Does that come up sometimes in conversation with Ghanaian officials?
Well, I think that we have a very strong relationship with the Ghanaians on cocoa overall. You know, let me say first and foremost, the U.S. is not only a major consumer of Ghanaian cocoa products, but the U.S. is also a very major investor in the Ghanaian cocoa industry. Companies like ADM and Cargill are not only active in Ghana, but they're very, very active in doing cocoa processing and adding value to cocoa products in Ghana, rather than having cocoa beans be a product that gets exported and all the value gets added somewhere else. I think that's a a great sign of the kind of very positive relationship we have. And also, we've been working very closely on improving conditions and eliminating worst forms of child labor within the cocoa industry. You may be familiar with the Harkin and Engels protocols, and the Ghanaian government, the U.S. government, cocoa growers, and the industry are all working very, very closely, and I think effectively, to make strides in that area as well.
That's Don Teitelbaum, U.S. Ambassador to Ghana.